What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Down the Middle with Los and Max. Max and Los. I am Los. That is Max. We have a weird setup today because we are shooting a bunch of other courses, content, and things like that. Also, in the next, hopefully, foreseeable future, we're going to have a completely different setup because we're going out and buying a bunch of furniture for the studio. God willing that we can actually find furniture, because you can't find cars, you can't find furniture. Basically, all you can find is food. You can't even find avocados anymore.
Nope.
There has been an avocado issue nowadays. I'm glad that we found each other.
Yep.
You know,
that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And we'll get a $10,000 couch.
Right. That's it. All right, guys. So today's topics, we're going to start with Russia. Why don't you get us started? Because you probably know more about the Russia situation.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing, and like, Russia is obviously a example of it, but this has been going on for forever. And I think it's the irony. It's like the media, and I say, the capital M media, right? Mm-hmm. Like mainstream, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all those guys, like they talk so much crap about the evils of, guys like Trump or war, all this stuff, right? It's always like just negative, but they need it. Like, right. That's the irony, and that's what I think most people are starting to see, and why their ratings continue to fall, is that, like, these big institutions thrive on scaring the shit out of us. Right. They thrive on controversy. They thrive on division, right? And so anytime, that's why January 6th was the single greatest day for CNN in their history of the company, right? Highest ratings of all time, January 6th, that coverage. And so, of course, you're going to double down and triple down and quadruple down on it, and that's all you're going to talk about for as long as you can, because that gets ratings. So it's like you can't be against this stuff, but then need it. Like your business interests are aligned with it happening. Yeah. And so I think it's what's happening with Russia is like, again, Putin's an evil dude, and you can't take his word for what he's saying, but he has said numerous times, and France has now said it, like, that he does not want to go to war. He has no plans of invading. He's pulled troops back. Obviously, he's still kept some troops there, but he's moved troops back. But despite all of that, if you open your phone on any article, and you search Russia or just your news apps and every headline is not just like Putin's going to invade any hour. It's like it's going to be a bloody aerial bombardment. Missiles are going to be launched. It's the most horrific thing that can happen. It's going to be a cyber war, and then there's going to be a regime change, and there's secret agents in there, and it's like a movie. It's like a Tom Clancy or Michael Bay.
I was at the gym today, and they were saying their news was that Putin said, like, I don't want any beef. And at the bottom of the subheadline was like, America does not believe it. Like, it is coming. It's like, the dude just said it. Like, I mean, not obviously, like, don't go ahead and 100% trust the guy, but like, yeah, I think it's also because, like, if you look, the other side of the news is like, state, place, no COVID, getting rid of the masks. Coachella just announced, like, hey, they went from, like, you have to be vaccinated, you have to do all these things, so, like, you can just come, whatever, just, it's fine.
It's the next big thing. So it's all of a sudden, we've had COVID, which has been the news, death, despair,
nothing to talk about,
sickness. That's great headlines. Everyone watches that right now. It's like, okay, everyone's kind of over COVID. Even the people that were scared of COVID, like the last, batch of people. Because here in Florida, we were over COVID a year ago, right?
Right.
But like even people in New Jersey, New York, and California are like, all right, we're done. And so now it's like, well, what do you talk about? You can't have your COVID death counter up there anymore, which again, like that's a whole nother story. It's how ridiculous that shit is. That like for years during COVID, CNN and all these are, had a counter of how many people are dying. And like nobody says that's pretty awful that you're like
massively morbid,
a death counter on your news station, right? So now it's Russia. It's World War III. There's going to be civilian deaths, and they're going to target civilian infrastructure and stuff. And it's like purely from a logistical, like Putin is crazy. He's, crazy dude. He's got an ego, and there's, we talked about this a few episodes ago. Like when he was in the KGB, the reports came out like he has a different risk reward tolerance for the person, but he's not a dumb guy. He's not an idiot, right? And so you have to know, if you're a Putin, like a land invasion, a military invasion with real troops into Ukraine is going to wreak havoc. And it's not going to be good for Russia. Like,
no,
they're not going to come out on top.
Logistically, it makes no sense.
They're not going to come out on top, right? They're not going to get what they want. You have everybody else except for pretty much China is like we're going to retaliate. Like there's going to be
Right.
issues, right? And they're already struggling. Their economies, I think Italy has a faster growing economy than Russia.
And
So
theirs is horrible.
yeah, so Putin doesn't want that. He has some very basic demands, which is mainly like, do not let Ukraine into NATO or the EU. And from everything that I've done, again, I'm not a political expert, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but like from everything, the research I've done, it seems like that's never going to happen anyway, that Ukraine's never going to be in NATO. So that's never going to happen. Why not just give Putin what he wants? Say, okay, it'll never happen. Ukraine can't do anything. And then it's done. It's, okay, you go back here. We have your concessions. You got, you negotiated, you won. Good for you. We can move on, because this is just ridiculous. It's tanking our stock market. Like it's impacting a lot of people day to day for something that is irrelevant to the United States. Like, who the fuck cares what's happening between Ukraine and Russia? I know some people that are, like, we need to be the police of the world and all this stuff.
We really don't, though.
But we don't. Let them.
No one else is.
Let them deal with it.
Right.
Let them deal with it. I don't want, like, we can transition to Shopify and stuff here. Like,
Right.
I don't want to wake up every morning and see my stocks down 10% because we are at the verge of war with Russia, even though we're really not, but the news is reporting it all the time. There's, fake reports coming out, or somebody getting it wrong, and there's a wrong news headline, and all of a sudden the stock market tanks because somebody said, like, earlier, last week it was February 16th, Russia is going to invade, and they're going to do this, and this, and it's going to be bloody and horrible. Who are these sources, right?
Yeah.
All these unnamed sources, right? And like, what's amazing is that the media continues to just take the government's word for it, that unnamed CIA sources say this. Do we not remember what happened with, mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction, right? For years, it was like, Saddam has WMDs. We have these sources, and they know that there's these factories, and they're making all these terrible weapons and stuff. And it's been this way it was way with Assad in Syria. It was unnamed sources say he's gassing his own people, and turned out that was bullshit. It turned out WMDs was bullshit. Like, anytime this happens, it's always bullshit. It's always convenient because the government could say, classified, can't tell you, but trust us. Let us go to war because of this unnamed source. We do it, or we do something bad that hurts a lot of civilians. It hurts our economy, hurts their economy, and we get nothing out of it. And I don't know how much more this needs to happen, how many more decades we need to do this for both parties, Republicans and Democrats, before most of us are just like, no, like, we're not doing this anymore. This is ridiculous.
So I think that this is why Joe Rogan wins, because he doesn't report the news. He just asks questions about things that are happening, kind of like us, obviously nowhere near the space, right? But like, we're not coming in with an agenda, and he doesn't really come in with an agenda. And I think people watch the news, point blank period. They do, right? Especially older people, boomers and all that kind of stuff. But it's all like manufactured. I mean, you've seen so many viral videos of like every state, every city saying the same exact thing, but the same exact tone and inflection and everything. And then you have other people that are podcasting and creating content that are just questioning what's going on and having conversations about what's going on. If there was one channel that did that, that channel would freaking explode. But I don't know if it's just decades and decades of like, this is the play we run, and no one's going to change it. But I definitely don't see it changing. I definitely see people waking up to it. But at the same time, I don't think we're such the minority. Like the majority of people believe everything. They're terrified of everything. And we live in like weird worlds. First of all, we live in Florida, which like doesn't understand COVID. Second of all, we're like internet marketers and like business owners. And so we kind of like question a bunch more stuff. Normal people just kind of like follow, and especially like middle America, right? Like they're just like, this is what it is. This is the rules. This is what's going on. And it's shocking to me that like the world won't, at least not even the world, America doesn't come together to wake up. If anything, everything just gets more separated, more segregated. It's just so blatantly obvious that is the goal, and it's working flawlessly. Yep. But I don't know why. Like, what's the point of it? Because we're just becoming weaker. Like any other bigger group can just come in and like take us over now, because we have no unity as a whole. From canceling everybody to fighting with like wherever you stand, whatever your decision is, like there's no, you can't have a conversation or an opinion. Like that is not cool unless it's exactly mine. And if it's not mine, you are an idiot, you're wrong, and you think the same of me, and we're just like enemies. We can't even debate this. it blows my mind. Like, how old are we? You know what I mean? Because these is grown ass men, grown ass women, and like the separation is just, it's so blatantly obvious, especially as a marketer. Like, the manipulation it's such a simple tactic, but it's working so well.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about our perspective on this. Why I like our show, because we don't talk about marketing or business. We talk about kind of bigger, more macro events, but we have a perspective as some people that have marketed for, decades plus.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so a lot of this stuff to me and to you is obvious. Like when I watch the news, like regular news, or read, the, New York Times or these articles, it's like, I know exactly what they're doing. Right. Like this whole Sarah Palin thing.
Right.
This whole Sarah Palin thing that was, we don't have to cover it in total, but like the case got dismissed. But basically she sued New York Times for libel and defamation because of an article they ran in 2017 saying that she posted something, I think, on social media in 2011 that was a map of the United States with different, like a bullseye above it for like campaigning. And the New York Times ran an article basically linking that to the shooting of Gabby Gifford. I forget, is that her name? The politician that got shot in 2011 in Arizona. And it was ridiculous. It was a total ridiculous story. There was no proof to it. Obviously, I don't think her suing is good either. I think journalism needs to be free of that. But it's like that thing. It's like somebody thought at the New York Times that was a good idea. Like the regular article is not good enough. What we need to do is basically like weave this really intricate story that a past vice president did something and it led to incitement of violence and a assassination attempt. Like, it's fear, and fear sells, and fear is always going to sell. And that's most people, the average person, is willing to sacrifice freedoms for security.
Yeah.
And that has been the playbook for world governments, for a very, very long time, is that if we can scare people enough, they are willing to concede freedoms and give us more control. And then we can do a lot more stuff. And that's been the playbook during COVID. It's the playbook, and anytime there's wars, it was the playbook post 9/11 that allowed us to get they pushed the Patriot Act through and all this horrible stuff. It was on that pretext of, hey, there's evil terrorists out there who are going to do more 9/11 attacks. So you need to let us basically scan your text messages and your emails and tap your phone and all this stuff.
We got your back.
Yeah, but we're doing it because if we don't do it, there's going to be another plane attack and another suicide attack. TSA, hey, you need to let us put this agency in place that's going to make air travel a nightmare. They're going to basically sexually assault you every day you go through travel. They're going to pat your groin with the back of their hand because that's not bad, right? That was the best joke. Remember when we saw Rogan? That was his joke, is like, can I use the back of my hand to fondle you? And that's somehow like different than the front of your hand, right? But it's like the TSA is useless. Like all these organizations, all these things are useless, but they're just a power grab, and people accept it. Like the fact that we still accept the TSA, that like there hasn't been a mass just like revolt against the TSA is insane.
It is insane. It's insane too that like you can cancel anything, but you can't question this.
Yeah, it's totally okay to do it for Rogan or all these other people, but it's not okay for people in power or these institutions, the big banks, the big businesses, the pharma companies, the media companies. They're off limits because they're too integral to society.
It's so obvious. Like if you discuss something now on Facebook, it gets chopped. If you discuss something on Twitter, it gets chopped. I mean, you don't think that is it getting chopped because they're getting paid? There's a relationship there. Pfizer, all these things, there's a relationship with all these places. And I mean, if you get a little bit loud with it, like the people in Canada, we can move to that. We'll just start seizing your assets. Why not? Like, we can do it. Who says we can't? And this is why crypto is going to be so big in the future.
Yeah. And by the way, just one final thing before the truckers. So Facebook, Zuckerberg stepping down from policy, and they just promoted, I'm trying to blank on the guy's name, but he was a former deputy prime minister in the UK that's now running policy for Facebook. And so it's again, like it's impossible to say that these big tech companies are not compromised.
Yeah.
Their executives, their board members, all these people are ex-politicians. Like they were running governments or they were advising governments, and they have connections still. Just because they're not there anymore doesn't mean they're not being,
of course,
given, hey, do this, do this.
That's probably why they're not there anymore, so they can move into this.
Yeah, that's the play. And that's what nobody I don't know why more people don't see this, is that the play is you go, you become a senator or a congresswoman, right? You work in the House or the Senate, you go to the Parliament, whatever it is, you go for a few years, you make all the connections, then you get lobbyist money, you get donations, you do some favors, and then what they promise you is, hey, when you leave government, if you hook us up, we'll give you a cushy, 7-figure job, and you can work for Facebook or Google or Apple or Twitter or any of these companies. And it happened, or Goldman Sachs, the banks, right? And that's like the Clintons, right? The Clintons, they, were politicians our lives. Now they're fabulously wealthy. And they get paid, 6-figure, 7-figure speaking slots to speak for Bain or McKinsey or Goldman, right? It's like they're not paying you because they genuinely think that your speech,
you essentially have nothing to say.
Yeah, your speech is not worth $250,000
right.
and travel and accommodations, right? They're paying you that because you hooked them up for years when you were in government,
right?
And that happens with everybody, not just Clintons. It happens with everybody, Republican, Democrat, even guys like Dan Crenshaw now is, under fire because he, was one of the most active traders. He had I think it was the second or third highest returns of a sitting U.S. politician right now in the stock market. It's like, that guy is not a stock market genius, right?
No.
He fought for our country. He did, a lot of, credit for that. And I respect that, but like, he's not some savant, right? So how did he beat the market that much? It's like, and then he was on a podcast, basically got questioned about it and said, like, he basically said, hey, do you think we should limit trading and all this stuff? And he was like, no, I don't think so. It's like, dude, come on.
It's ridiculous. So let's talk about everything that's been going on too with truckers. So we talked about this last week. The truckers are holding a strike. Trudeau just decided, hey, you do whatever you want. Even though 95% of you are vaccinated, it's just more like a ethics and moral kind of a situation. We're going to start holding people's revenue, right? Like they're just freezing the banks.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an emergency power that's basically, I think it's been maybe used once or twice in Canadian history. And it gives them sweeping power. Essentially, it's almost like martial law level control, like if they implemented that at a state or federal level in the United States.
Right.
And so one of the things that they can do is they can basically freeze funds. They can freeze bank accounts. They can freeze bank transfers. They can freeze, all these kind of donations that are coming in. Also, they're talking about doing it for crypto as well. And they can do it without a court order. And that should terrify people. Because again,
and Canada's not going to do anything about it, bro.
No. And it should terrify people again. And we've talked about this many, many times on the show, that you need to look at these things from a 30,000 foot view and think about, if this is not your party, let's say you're super progressive and you don't care. You think all these people are racist rednecks, right? Which I think that's ridiculous, because that's what they do all the time. They label a fringe group of a protest movement and they make the whole protest movement, right? Yeah. They did it with the left, they did it with the right, right? Is this sets precedent. And if all of a sudden now whoever is in power in Canada, the US can say, we don't like the underlying motives of the protest, so we are going to basically freeze your funds and label you terrorists and all this stuff. Like, they can do that to anybody, right? If power switches and now it's a super conservative person, they can do that to, the BLM movements. They can do, you need to look at this from a perspective of okay, I don't agree with the protest that's happening, which is fine. If you don't agree with them, that's fine. But protest is a integral part of a free society. Being able to protest is key. If you don't agree with what's happening and you're the people, you should be able to protest. The government should not be able to say, because we don't agree with it or you're hurting us, which is what the protest should do, right? This is an effective protest, which is why they're doing this stuff. They're desperate.
But there's no conversation about it. There's just action. Hey, there's a reaction to you do this, I do that. There's no open dialogue.
Yeah. They should just sit down. Why didn't you just sit down with these people and figure out exactly what they want and come to some form of compromise? I just don't get the play here. This makes it, from a perspective of risk reward for Trudeau, this was stupid. Just COVID's over. COVID's over. Like it's still here, but I'm saying it's not a pandemic anymore. It's endemic. This is now just like the flu. It's with us. We have lots of treatments. We have vaccines. We have all these things. People have the option to get these things, right? Most people have already gotten it. Omicron was so contagious, right? And we know that the vaccine doesn't prevent spread. It helps with the hospitalization and, death, right? But like mandating at this point in the, 2 years in was stupid. Like, especially for a group of people that are more vaccinated than the population on percentage, for a group of people that don't interact with people. They sit in a closed cabin all day driving. So what's going on there, right? And a group of people that for the first year and a half of the pandemic were heroes, the truckers, right? They're working overtime to keep us moving. Like all of that, you're not taking any of that into account and just saying 2 years in, we need to have vaccine mandates on truckers. So the extra 5% or so of truckers that aren't vaccinated get vaccinated. And that's worth what's happened.
I wish I knew the back end of this whole thing, man, because it's just so, like you said, right? It's clearly obvious to us. It's like, I don't understand all of the things that are happening. It baffles me because I've never seen something last so long that is clearly so forced and clearly so manipulative. And now it's going away. And so, I mean, Canada's kind of going through their own thing. Obviously, they're not the U.S., but in the U.S., I mean, even the blue states are kind of being like, and I saw some report again on the news as I was just going to the gym and stuff, that they want to give us a break. They're like, oh, a lot of these states are trying to give us a break from what we've gone through. Like, how does that, a break? Like, so you're going to come back? Or like, are we done with it? Like, we're done with it, but you won't admit, hey, we've forever made this mistake. Like, we can't keep doing this. You guys have the views and everything just shows you don't give a crap about this stuff anymore. So I guess it just kind of is over, right? Even like I said, like Coachella, who 2 years ago I was going to go, then they shut it down again. And then they're like, you have to be vaccinated. You have to do all these things. They just announced, they're like, anybody, anytime, any place, you can come here, you can go to Stagecoach, you can do whatever you want. We just want to get the money back. We just need to make money nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, it's purely political now. It's purely like we realized that everybody is done with this. And if we keep pushing, we are going to lose. I'm going to lose my seat. Like if you're a governor, if you're a senator, if you're in the House, like if you're in Canada and in Parliament, like you're on the wrong side now. And the tide has turned, and it is purely now being done politically because, again, the last few months, nothing's changed science-wise.
Not at all.
No facts are coming out. Nothing's changed. It is purely now we're getting closer to midterms. It's getting to election season. And if you're a Democrat especially, you're seeing Biden is historically unpopular, like horrifically unpopular. He's at the same basically place that Trump was. And Trump was a disaster, but the difference with Trump is that Biden has no base that loves him. Mm-hmm. So Trump was hated by a lot of people, but he had like basically
the other people loved him.
And like 90% of Republicans were like, I will support this guy no matter what. I think it's like the stat I saw, I think it was like 60% of Democrats want him to be like the candidate for the next, election, which is horrible. It might actually be lower
Biden?
than that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But even that, so it's maybe 60-50, but it's a lot lower. So it's still, you have like about half of Democrats don't even want the sitting Democratic president to run again for election, right? So he's got no core support. He's just got a lot of people that really hate him. So people are distancing themselves. They're like, we need to, if we want to win, if I want to keep in power, like I need to change some stuff up. I can't be pro lockdowns, pro mandates, people don't want this. I need to figure out inflation's out of control. People, the wages aren't rising as fast. The job market's crazy. Supply chain, stock market. I need to figure some stuff out because this is not working, and I'm going to get my ass beat in the next election. Right, which is going to happen regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a world where this guy could win a spelling contest.
No,
at all.
Yeah, and the funny thing is like. Then we can just talk some about the economy and stock market and anything else we want to talk about. But I think it's funny this swing that happens every 2 years.
It's cyclical.
It just, especially once there's an election year. So 2 years into an election, like it's, whoever's in power, there's a huge swing the other way. So what happened with Trump, it's all of a sudden Republicans get swept out and Democrats come in. And then with Biden, Democrats are going to get swept, Republicans are going to come in. And it's like, at some point, us as a society, Americans need to look at what's happening and be like, this just doesn't work. We basically do the same thing every election cycle. We say, okay, this guy said he was going to do X, Y, and Z. He is awful. We hate him. Let's go to the other party and let's change it up. And because they all make promises about that we're going to change things back. And then we do that. And they make promises. And we're like, well, these people suck. Like, we need to change things back. And it just, we do it every 2 years, every 4 years for a president. It's like, and nothing gets better. Nothing gets better. We never get a candidate. We never get a person who genuinely comes in and changes the game, makes things better, improves our lives. And I don't know what the solution is. Like, I think this, I don't know the exact solution, but like a generalized solution is like, we need to change the election timeframes, like campaign financing. Like, an idea I had was, because there's so much corruption in how like people fund candidates, and certain candidates get all these donor dollars and they're beholden to them, right? It's like, what if there was like a taxpayer pool for elections, and every candidate that was in the primary, so that the Democratic or Republican nominee got like a fixed amount of money and had to make their best case. It was basically like an even playing field for everybody. And it was based on your merit and based on your ability to campaign and your oration skills and stuff. Like, I don't know. Again, these are ideas I've just been thinking about. Is like, what can you do to make things better and get rid of corruption, or just changing, like, being able to be reelected? Like, maybe it's you lengthen the time frame and there's no reelection. So it's basically, you're not worried about campaigning or getting reelected. You can come in and actually do what you want to do and what you promised to do, even if it's not popular now, but at least you'll be consistent and get things done. And you don't have to worry about like, I need to flip-flop back because people don't like it and I want to get reelected, so I'm going to compromise and change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man, because I don't think also like having one president is the play. I think there needs to be like a business. There's a board of advisors, like a real one, that are elected separately, like not just by like, you can't pick me and like Jeremy and all the homies, you know what I mean? Like, you get people from different places, and that's how you vote. And that, if not, like, just one, because honestly, Biden's an idiot. Biden's not even making decisions. Like, I can't spell his name, so it's not him. It's the party. But who in the party? Like, what's the specificity? Like, who's pulling these strings, right? And that's the thing that we have with every president. Like, they don't pull the strings. I mean, maybe Trump, he was very intense, and like, he probably was like, no, I'm doing this thing, but he comes from like a business background, and I don't care how you slice it. Like, when he, on the business side of things in the US, like, we were doing okay with that stuff. I honestly think a businessman should run. I don't care if you think him or whoever, like, a businessman, for starters, the president should get paid more. So there's none of this stuff, because $400,000 a year for a president's like, that's not a lot of money. You know what I mean? You're killing yourself for 4 years, whether you were good or bad. Like, you're getting destroyed, like, emotionally and mentally and stuff like that. And I think it should be someone that has done something, like, not lobbied and not like got himself up in like Senate. Like, that's just a shit talker. Like, it should be someone who's achieved something, who like runs this like a business, like runs a nation, like, logically, like an Elon Musk, or maybe not him, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that it should be a requirement. Have you had a business? Have you done something? Like, not just like, hey, did you go from like small town in Chicago and like mayor to this, to this, to this, and like all the way up to like presidency? Because like, that's just like BSing and moving yourself up just because you're just a lobbyist, really.
Yeah, I almost think it's like, should be a disqualifier to have been a career politician.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, if you've been in public office your entire life, like, that shouldn't make you a better candidate for president.
It should make you worse.
It should make you worse. But for some reason, that's been the way that's been positioned, is like, this person, they were a governor, and then they were a senator, and now they were a vice president, now they're a president. It's like, all that means to me is that this person has had more time to be compromised and corrupted by DC and get lobbied and bribes and all this stuff, and less time actually knowing what's going on in the country experiencing what it's like to be a real person, a real, citizen of the country, and having any experience running a real successful organization. Because our government, if you look at it from like a business standpoint, is a horribly run business. It's
bankrupt.
It's a terribly run business. If our government was a private company, it would have been bankrupt decades ago, right? So the fact that we pretend like these people are like really effective at running the business of America is like, no, they're awful at it. Every strategic decision in terms of wars, and like if you said like, hey, let's pretend like wars are mergers and acquisitions, and our funding is our tax. Like we just kind of label things like a business. All those things would be terrible. Like all of our mergers and acquisitions would be horrible ones that ended up not ROIing for us. And we would be overspending and we'd be over leveraged. And like, it would be a terrible run of business. And so the senators and the, executive branch and all this stuff, like they are doing terrible work running the American business.
I guess it's impossible, man. Cause I also think that you should get like, how these people are dinosaurs. They don't know what's going on with Web3, barely Web 2. Like they don't know anything. But if you start including tech people inside of that, at one point, where do I get compromised as Mark Cuban or Elon? Like, oh, well, I can probably finagle this here, and that's going to be great for me and the things that I'm doing. It's going to happen, right? Like, because you're at the top, you're God. You're the God of a nation, right? Like in the top level of, like Greek mythology, you'd be like one of the gods. And so you'd have to be a certain kind of person to not be like, well, I can probably just convince Max to do this or give Max something to do this. And now I'm going to be good for the next decade. And so I don't know how you fight
corruption.
Yeah. Because that's at the end of the day, I don't care where you vote or who you are, like tech, not tech, business guy or old person, corruption will come to you. And you're like, oh, well, now there's ethics there, right? That you have to kind of like face. And at that level, we've never been in any position like that. But at that level, I don't know what you think, right? Clearly they all think, no, I'm going to do it, because no matter who you are, it's all corrupt in one way or the other.
Yeah. I think you either need to open up radical transparency, right? Meaning like everything gets moved to a blockchain where every transaction is on a ledger and like publicly visible. There's no backroom deals. Like, again, I don't know the exact solution, or you just need to find somebody that truly does not care, like financially, like just doesn't need any more money. Like it's no longer again, say what you want about Musk, and he's done plenty of things wrong, and he said plenty of things wrong. He's not, PC at all. But at the same time, like I don't know the guy, so I could be totally wrong here, but from the outside looking in, I genuinely do not think that guy cares about how much money he makes today.
No.
I 100% believe that he actually, when he wakes up every morning, he's like, I want to change the fucking world.
Right.
Like I want to do something, whether it's selfish, like I want to change the world because I want people to remember me forever,
that
or
works.
he wants to change the world just altruistically. I don't care.
Right.
Like the things he's working on are so massive in scope and so financially taxing. And he's put all of his money in multiple times and risked it all, right? To keep things going early on with SpaceX and Tesla when they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Like a guy like that, I believe would come in, and whether you agree with what his decisions are, that's a whole other thing strategically. But
right.
I don't think a guy like that would care. Like you're coming and trying to bribe.
He's trying to change humanity.
I want to give you $20 million or $100 million. Like, I don't care. Like we're going to Mars. Like, or I'm going to put neural links in every human's head. Like
right.
He would want to do something big and bold. I think you need something like that. That just is a true visionary that truly doesn't care about, they're already fabulously wealthy. They don't need to worry about money anymore. They just want to change the world, and they have a position of power that they could actually do that.
I wonder if we will see that in our lifetime.
I don't think so. I
don't either.
I think short of some
I think we got 40, 50 years of the same.
Yeah, I think this kind of sounds scary to say, but like I think short of some type of civil war or coup or radical takeover where just the masses just rise up, I don't see it changing, because you can't change it. Like that's the thing. The system has been created in a way that now is essentially impossible to change, because it's a two-party system, and those two parties hate each other, but they also love having power. They're not going to roll the dice to risk losing that power.
Right.
So there's never going to be a third party or a fourth party that's going to get
so hard
support with the current way the system's set up, with the way the primaries and the debates and the way the election's set up. It's like impossible for a third party candidate to compete.
Right.
So I don't know. It sucks.
So let's end it today on the stock market. I know that you had a good thing with Amazon, but a bad thing with Shopify. The stock market, because of everything that we talked about earlier, and probably a few other things, I think it's past correcting. I don't know. I'm still kind of like on the fence, like whether we're going to see a recession, more aggressive corrections. I mean, I totally agree that things should be on the correction side, but there's just so much going on with corrections and inflation and crypto going up and down, and there's just so much volatility right now. I think March might. I've talked to a lot of guys that are like big into like trading stocks and stuff like that, and they're like, "Listen, February is going to be a bloodbath. March is going to start to. You can make some good investments that are going to start picking back up." But I don't see. I don't know, man. Like every time I think something's going to be good, it is the opposite. And when I'm like, "Oh, this is definitely going to happen," like the opposite happens as well.
Yeah.
Like, I can't predict anything anymore.
I mean, you did. To be fair, though, we can roll the tape back. You did call. I think 3 episodes ago, you said you think Shopify is going lower. So that was good. You called that. I disagreed with you, and I paid the price for that. You also, I think you said that Meta wasn't going to do well. I believe we can go back and listen, but I think in the same episode you talked about both of those, and both those things happened. So you did do good calling those. It's like some of the valuations that were crazy. Like I think it's corrected so much on some of the companies. Like, listen.
I don't think Peloton can get back to it.
Yeah, I hate Meta, Facebook, and Zuckerberg. We've talked to this
every day.
The show could be called the
we don't like
Joe
Zuck.
Rogan cancellation show. And we hate the Zuckerberg show because we talk about it all the time. But it's trading at a 15 PE right now. Like that's pretty fucking crazy. Like a 15 PE, like price earnings multiple, is like a industrial company. Like that's a low growth, like utility kind of value company, not a tech company valuation. So I think even if like they don't really innovate that much, like I still think, at least for the next few years, I don't see them go. We talked about this last time. I don't think they're going out of business anytime soon.
No.
So I think like I hate the company, but I'm also like just realistic about money and opportunity. To me, like a company like Facebook trading at a 15 PE is pretty insane.
I think that they've got one play, and it's Meta. I mean, they've lost $200 billion. They lost $10 billion in trying to even make this whole thing happen. I think they changed their name because they're not worried about ads. 96% of the revenue comes from advertising. They're spending all of it to get out of it because they've exhausted the reach that they can do on ads and bidding and all that stuff. I think though that there's this other thing where people hate Facebook, like humans, like there's never been. I think the social network kind of ruins Zucks because you don't look at Sergey and the other guy from Google and the new Indian CEO, and you don't think about him as big tech. You look at Mark and you're like, oh, that guy's the worst person in the world, right? And he just keeps not innovating but stealing, which doesn't support any good like values that you would want to like about the guy. As an advertiser, we can't stand him because he just makes our life horrible while it's like slavery. Like he makes you, hey, you're going to have to stay here and you're going to have to pay me money or else like die.
You have no choice.
Right. Like you have no choice. You are pigeonholed as, and you're not, but like you, to a degree, you kind of are. And plenty of people like us are like, dude, see you later. And that's going to keep going. That's going to keep going. Bigger companies are going to start going elsewhere as well. Users, yeah, I get it. Like there's like tracked. There's a lot of people that are still on Facebook, but it's going down. WhatsApp's really kind of like the big savior on that stuff because of all of Europe and things like that. But I don't see more growth from them. Meta is weird to me because you can convince like average Americans clearly or in the world to anything. So they'll have some traction, but it's going to be the complete opposite of what that was supposed to be. Like it's kind of like the mall version of the metaverse, right? And so like people that are really into that would never engage in it. Maybe make some choices on like, yeah, I bet you if we put some money into that stock later on, it will go up. Just because once it really pops, the normal people, all the advertising will go into like, man, look at that. Like they won't know about Decentraland. They won't know about Mana. They won't know about all these things. You know what I mean? So maybe there, but I think the future's fickle. I don't see it being like abundant for them. What's crazy is that the future is powerful for China because they have TikTok, and then the other big thing, and we can call on this, I forget the name of the website, I'll look it up and we can talk about this one next week, but there's a site, I think it's called Kino or something like that, which is basically China's version of drop shipping and direct consumer. You can buy like anything on that website, and they're basically sending it from the factory over to you. They started with clothing, but now they're doing all kinds of like home goods and articles and things like that. That is someone who can actually compete, and they're doing, I don't know how, and I'll go back and research so I can talk about this a little bit more next week in next week's episode. But they're basically bypassing having to have like shipping and goods and all those costs. And if you keep going with that, the two biggest companies that no one pays attention because everyone's just fighting with each other are going to be Chinese. And then the last one is going to be Zoom, which is also Chinese. So like three huge data in like two big data companies and one shipping and logistic monster that could compete with Amazon in the next 5-6 years are going to be all Chinese. Yeah. And no one's trying to like shut that down. While in the meantime, there's no Facebook, there's no Google, there's no anything over there, but we're just fighting with each other and trying to wear masks. Think for yourselves, people, because this is all like in your face. It's just in your face.
Yeah, think about what's really most important. And I think, the final thing we can end on is just, I think there is tremendous opportunity right now. And I think there's a lot of great stuff happening and a lot of things to be, happy about and excited about in terms of what's happening, just innovation wise in technology with crypto, Web 3.0 and decentralization. And I think there's so many opportunities and we're still as a country incredibly lucky. Like I think it's at a fundamental level, like all the COVID shit, that's all been ridiculous. But like in the grand scheme of things, we're still an incredibly free country. We still live incredibly well. Even the poorest among us still
running water,
so much better than most. I think just gratitude is a big thing. Yeah. I think spending a little bit of time every day, if everyone just spent 5 minutes thinking about what they're grateful for that day, like writing, I do that. I know you do that. I know a lot of people, I know do that, like gratitude journal, even if something as simple as saying, hey, I'm grateful for the fact that I have Netflix, that I can consume any content I want whenever. Audible, I can read any book in the world when I want to. My phone, I have a supercomputer. Yeah. I'm grateful for the fact that I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful for the fact that I can eat 3 meals a day. I'm grateful for the fact that I have refrigeration.
I can access my bank account.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the fact that all these things, that I have a free platform where I can connect with friends and family and talk to them whenever I want. I can video chat. Like there's so many just things we take for granted every day because they're just become normal. And so instead of, reading the news every day and consuming kind of the mainstream digest of war and distrust and hate and division and politics, like turn it off for a bit, right? Turn off social media for a bit and just reflect on what you got going for you. Because I think we all have a lot of good stuff going for us.
I think to end it with this, guys, I realized with this podcast too, like we're really trying to empower you guys to become more free thinkers. Obviously him and I are super free thinkers, and like we make our own opinions. We're happy to have discussions and happy to be wrong, happy to be right. It doesn't matter, but like we're not going to be told without thinking freely about what's the opposite look like, or what does something else look like. And so if you take anything out of the podcast today, just take the ability to be more grateful for the things that you have and to be more of a free thinker, guys. So with that, I will tell you that you shouldn't think about this. You should just subscribe to the podcast and join the notifications. And please leave us a review so that way more people can listen to us and we can have more fun with you guys and continuously have this episode and all these other episodes growing more and more and more. So that's it for us, guys. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Bye.
Later, guys.